What's going on, everyone? My name is Josie Reynolds, and today joining me is the man, the myth, Mr. Joffie Houlton. Obviously, today we're going to be breaking down the Cage Warriors Manchester card that takes place around April 15th. But the first fight on the card, Mr. Houlton, is Josh Reed versus Liam Malloy. What are we saying?
Yeah, we've actually just had a little brief chat about this. Obviously, different match than originally. Originally, Josh was prepping for Manny Akpan. Manny's unfortunately had to withdraw. Liam, not quite the same record as Manny. He's looking at 3-2, switching wins and losses. Josh coming in at 12-8, I think it is. I think it's a difficult match for both of them. You kind of mentioned to me briefly, Josh kind of coming in that kind of gatekeeper position at the moment. I think Josh coming off 2 losses, it's kind of a must win for him at this situation. But I think between the two of them, the one that's certainly going to have another fight on Cage Warriors after is probably going to be Josh. If you're looking at from Liam's point of view, I feel like he's in a very much back against the wall must win situation. Just purely based on the experience, I've kind of got to give it to Josh. I just don't feel like I don't think there's been any point where he's lost 2 in a row. And I think he is kind of at the upper echelon of UK MMA, if not quite, ready to break onto that greater Europe world scene at the minute.
Yeah, and I think as well, you look at the fact the last 4 opponents Josh Reed has had, I think 4 of them have been undefeated. Dylan Hazan, you've got Kurban, Kizriev, then as well. The only opponent that had losses was Luke Shanks, where he lost by submission. And then as well, his last fight where he took on Ryan Shelley, he's not far off a KO. And then even Liam Malloy's last fight, I think, was against Ben Reese. And you can see that step up sort of in competition for him. Ben Reese was 3-4, and he's now fighting someone 12-8. And Josh Reed he was training for someone on a different show, but he's been moved to this one. So it's not like he's coming in on any short notice. He's going to be ready for him. So I think it makes it an interesting fight. I mean, you take a look, Tapology. Yeah, Josh Reed's an 85% favourite at the moment of about 50 predictions. But in terms of that fight, I think you have got to just edge Josh Reed a little bit. But I think it's a must-win for sort of both fighters into that fight, definitely.
Yeah, the whole must-win factor, definitely. I mean, like I say, you'll kind of give Josh a little bit more of a layoff because he was prepping for somebody else. He's prepping for, obviously, Manny Akpan. Manny's a hard person to prepare for because you literally do not know what he's going to come with. I've trained with Manny, and it could look normal for 4 minutes out of a 5-minute round, and that 1 minute that it doesn't look normal is the entire minute that you were getting hit and really damaged. Obviously, everybody remembers his spinning back kick KO. It's very, very different training for somebody like Manny than it is training for Liam, who's a lot more consistent in what he comes and does.
Yeah, I think then, in terms of this fight, in terms of anything else to add to it, I think taking a look at it as well, the gyms as well that they both come from, obviously Shaw MMA and then Next Gen MMA. I feel as though in this fight, when you are taking on Manny Akpan, people are they're not going to be wanting to be on the feet with him at all. And I think the way that Josh will prepared originally for this fight will be a lot different for what he's got to bring against Liam Malloy. Obviously, Next Gen, they're known for the submission grappling that they do have and known to be very efficient on the ground. So I feel as though he may even have to change sort of how he fights into this one compared to with Manny Akpan a little bit.
Yeah, I think changing the way you fight is never necessarily a great approach to do. You should go in with your game plan from gun and look to impose that on your opponent, no matter who that would be. I remember a promoter once saying to me when I had a late notice pullout, and I was looking to speak to my coach and whatever, and he was like, ultimately, it's still going to be the same fight. You should be imposing your game on someone. When I referred it to my coach said the same thing. And that, I think it's difficult. Next Gen have got a fantastic grappling background, but so Shaw MMA. It's it's an interesting fight. It's one of the more interesting fights on the card. I'm glad something's materialized. Happy for Josh to still get about. I think it'll be interesting to see.
No, 100%, and that is the only prelim fight that the marked as a prelim at the moment. The next one is then Adam Cullen versus Dimitri Galin as well, 6-0 versus 5-1. Cullen obviously undefeated, says on a 6-fight win streak, and then Dimitri on a 2-fight win streak. His last fight, it's going to be his debut in Cage Warriors. His last fight was on Venator around a year ago. So he's had some time out of the cage and not much of an active year, obviously. And his only defeat has come to Frank Aguilera, who's 3-1. So this is a big step up for him in competition. Whereas I feel like it also not too much for Adam Cullen. but it's around the similar sort of records he has been facing in the past as well.
Yeah, Cullen's a stud. Like Cullen's straight up a stud. You look at the kind of the body of work that he's had. It's fairly even body of work in terms of wins losses for the opponents. I mean, there was a point where he was fighting 5-1, fighting 4-0, 5-2, things of that nature. He's fought good guys, and the big thing for Cullen, I think if I'm not mistaken, all first round finishes. Like all first round finishes. I'm talking a couple by TKO, but like subs. I'm sure it's like 3 RNCs and things of that nature. He's got a great grappling body. And he's always been under that Cage Warriors light. All of his pro fights have been under Cage Warriors. What I can say for obviously Dimitri is he's coming from, other big shows, Venator there on UFC Fight Pass. He's not going to be sat there, he's not going to be sat there unexpected of what's coming. But I don't think the caliber of people that he's fought is going to be the same. And Adam's been in, what bowlers is like, when you walk into the BEC, it's quite loud. He's been in front of the Cage Warriors crowd before. He knows how that feels. I remember watching him get himself crowned last time. I see this being very much another night on the Adam Cullen show, first round finish.
100%. And I think even, you take a look, he's fighting the BEC, you mentioned there with the crown, obviously, that he took off Paddy Pimblett, but as well, the age of both fighters is interesting, obviously. Adam Cullen's only 25, he's just gone 25, and then as well, his opponent's only 28, so both, I think Cullen's way off his prime at the moment, whereas Dimitri, it's hard to say prime, Glover Teixeira, near in his 40s, but you look at the sort of typical age where people start to move into their best. He's the boat. Galen's quite on the border now for that. And then Cullen, he's only 3 years off. So it's an interesting fact to see where it takes him. But I think the winner will they'll take the next step really in their careers, whether he gets the upset victory or Cullen goes and does what he's known best to do at the moment.
Yeah, I think realistically, the way I would put it is it's Cullen's fight to lose. But also that kind of puts the pressure on him a little bit. Dimitri, for me, has probably got about as little pressure as he could be. He's the away guy. He's flying in. Obviously, he's coming from Italy. He's fought on big shows in Italy, but he's never been under the cage where he's like, Adam is known to be a finisher, so that kind of comes with its own pressure. I personally don't see it going any other way. Adam's. I can't be any clearer. Adam is a stud. He's obviously going to be, if he doesn't fight for the title next time out, it'll be the time after, and before you know it, I'm sure Uncle Dana will be on the phone to him. But he's very likely to move on after this one or the next one. I would say. I think he could hang with a lot of lightweights in the UFC at the moment. Again, coming out of a fantastic camp, I don't think he's got anything major to worry about here. And when you speak about primes, he's only just turned 25. He's got a long career to go, like a long career to go. And to have this many pro fights finishing all in the first round, you're taking no damage. Would it be good to see him go the distance and kind of explore his game a little bit more? Yeah, but he knows his game. He's finishing people with it. So why does he need to go and explore it more? It would only be for my benefit.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much everything you can add to that fight. The next one, I'm looking forward to get your words on this. Obviously, Andy Clamp versus Hassan Ben Nabi, I believe. 11-2 versus 4-0, a big step up for Hassan. And then Andy Clamp, he's always, while in cage, is going to be a fight off of a title shot. I think if he'd have beat Chuck Campbell, he would have fought for the title already by now or been booked to fight against Modestas Bukauskas. But taking a look at that fight, what are you thinking, Mr. Joffie?
Andy has been like 1-2 fights away from the UFC for a while. Obviously, he took an extended break. I trained with him somewhat recently, and his wrestling and grappling is fantastic. Has always been the case. I believe he's purple, if not brown belt now. Purple or brown belt. Under obviously Tom Blackledge, fantastic coach, fantastic setup that he's got, and he's so wired into what he's doing. He's so engaged in what's going on. I remember speaking to him and thinking, you are so tuned in to what's going on here. A wealth of experience. He's been through the trenches and he knows how that feels. He knows that he doesn't want to take this to the distance. If he sees an opportunity to finish, that's it. It's going to end. Now, conversely, obviously, Ghassan's not had that kind of experience yet. He's only 4-0. Now, he's had some good fights. I mean, looking at his record, you can see he's been to decision once, finish two KO finishes and an armbar. He's no slouch. He's the last time I believe he was a blue belt in BJJ, but I have no doubt by now that he's at least purple, if not higher. And he's had his whole camp out at Tiger Muay Thai, so he's going to be coming in with a good level of fitness. He will have had great training partners around him. We see that the heads that are out there at Tiger all the time. For me, that wealth of experience, again, being in Andy's favor, I think is a good thing. And as stupid as it sounds, it's a really weird thing to reflect on, but is going out to Thailand for your camp necessarily the best thing? He's Ghassan's Dutch. He could have spent his time working with a lot of heavies and light heavies over in Holland, and getting good rounds out there. There's a lot of glory kickboxers that still live out there and train out there. You could have been getting good, big, heavy rounds in. I personally think it's Andy's fight. I think he puts him up against the cage and it becomes a very much grinding fight, and he waits till there's almost a moment of quitting Ghassan, just because I think that's what he can put on you. He puts a kind of pressure and pace on you that a lot of people don't really want to deal with. Now, if Ghassan can avoid that, fantastic for him. Are we going to see, anything kind of like what Andy's last fight was? I don't think so. I think he changes it up really well. And when we're looking at his record, Chuck finished him with ground and pound. I don't necessarily see that going the same way. I think Chuck had caught him pretty cleanly, but you don't see that often. You don't see that often. You look at his losses, and it's not like that for him. And you look at the kind of damage he's taking in fights, he's not taking big levels of damage like that. Be an interesting fight, but I've got to run with Andy on this one.
Yeah, and as well, you sort of take a look at the fight. Obviously, I know from just looking online, Andy Clark, he's been to several different gyms. Obviously, his main gym, Blackledge MMA, then he's been to Manchester Top Team, and he's basically just been going to some of the best heavyweights in the country, really, for his training. Whereas Ghassan as well, he's been doing his camp out in Thailand, which is a little bit of a change from his usual, but he's been out there before. In terms of sort of looking at the training partners Andy Clamp's had, he's made it almost sort of specific to his opponent, almost, the closer that he's got to the fight. So do you feel as though when you look at someone like Andy Clamp and the work that he can do, that he'll pretty much know everything there is to know about Ghassan moving into that fight? And will Ghassan be able to pick up on everything that Andy Clamp can do as well, or his team that he'll be bringing out to corner him for the bout as well?
I think Andy's got a fantastic mentality for the game. He's obviously, like I say, he's been around for a very, very long time at this stage. I think he's got such good skills everywhere that when he's sharpening up for specific opponents, he really knows what he's doing. Ghassan's obviously got great kickboxing pedigree, but I don't think when we get into the striking exchanges, I mean, ultimately, you can have great pedigree and that's fantastic, but when we take off the big gloves and we put on the little ones, there's going to be a change. And I think Andy's so skilled in this realm that you're going to be looking at a difficult night all in all for Ghassan. I would, if I was going to put my stamp on this, and this is personally the fight I'm most interested in. I'm literally going to the show purely because I'm interested in seeing this fight, and I've got to believe it's Andy in the second round.
Yeah, and then we'll move on to the next one. Obviously, Jordi Bakassi is back again, I do believe, under the Cage Warriors promotion, after making his debut where it was against Antonio Sheldon, which I believe as well was in Manchester. So it's not the first time he's fought in the BC Arena. And he's taken on Bailey Gilbert, he's had a pretty crazy rise in the last sort of year. Obviously, the big win for him was Thomas Paul. He was on the brink of the UFC on Dana White Contender Series. He came back. He was expected to sort of run through anyone that put in front of him on the UK scene, and Bailey Gilbert really did seal his thunder almost. And now he's here. Obviously, in this fight, not a lot of people see him losing, I don't think, but sort of taking a look at what he's doing and the work he's done at Machine MMA in the last sort of year, and then moving on to his opponent, who, he's a very high level himself as well. What are your thoughts for this fight?
I mean, if I'm looking at it from my view, obviously, I've got a good relationship with Antonio Sheldon. I remember watching that fight, and it ended in a draw. It was a great fight. It was a good back and forth. Ando the bit everybody remembers is Ando rolling his head on the cage and ducking and diving out all the shots. Ando was very bloody in that fight, and he was still coming forward. That to me, was a telltale sign, because it looked like at that point there was some quit in Jordi. There was a point where he's looking at him like, I can't finish this guy. And that's kind of hard to reflect on when you look at all of his fights the vast majority have gone to decision. I think he's had one finish, and I believe it was by a triangle choke, if I'm not mistaken. When you look at Bailey's had a couple of finishes in there, but I don't think the caliber of opponent is necessarily the same. They wouldn't be the kind of household names that you're going to recognize. And I'm not turning around and saying that Ando's a household name, but if you look at Geordie's record, he's fighting marginally better guys that neither of them have fought particularly high level guys. Like Ando's probably the highest level guy that Geordie's fought. Thomas Paul, highest level that Bailey's fought, and he's looking to really build on that momentum. Like you say, Thomas had just got back from the Dana White's Contender Series. It's something good to build on. Fairly even fight, 8-4 versus 5-3, 5-2-1, something like that. Fairly even fight. Geordie's been under those Manchester lights before though, and he's been around the game. If you look at Bailey's fights, you're looking at kind of the biggest show he's been on is Golden Ticket, which is a big regional show. But again, big regional show. Geordie's been here before. That's where I'd be rocking with. Geordie's, but just purely on the basis of it, I'd say skill set wise, they're about even. I'm running with the guy that's been under the lights before. He knows what it feels like. He's made that walk. I think if you fight early doors in bowlers, you fight anywhere before kind of 6 fights to go, it's cold. It's cold because it's not full. When it's full, oh my God, it's warm. There's a big difference, and he's going to know that on that walk. Does Bailey know what that feels like? I'm personally, I know he's the hometown, like he's going to be the hometown boy from England, but I'm running with Geordie on this one.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things about the fight is obviously Bailey Gilbert's experience as a pro, still only being 23. He's 23, he's had 12 pro fights already. I think, obviously, you mentioned the biggest promotion he's been on is Golden Ticket Fight Promotions. I don't know how many tickets he's sold for this fight and whether or not he's going to be bringing a big crowd with him. Maybe, potentially, it can play out in his favour. Rhys McEwen, you'd think the move BEC Arena up to Scotland when you watch him fight. And if Bailey Gilbert can do a similar thing with the crowd, you never know. But I think in this fight, it's on topology, a lot of people they're looking past Bacchus quite a lot, but it's a very close fight, I think, when you do take a look at both fighters.
It's closer than people think. This one, skill set wise, there's not a huge ton of difference between the two. It's closer than you think. And I think when we look at the kind of caliber of opponents, I'm not, turning around and saying Geordie's had the harder crop of things, because obviously Bailey, having a scalp over Thomas Paul is a fantastic thing. But for me, I know what I'm riding on this one.
And then we'll move on to the next fight of that one. Obviously, I've already mentioned him a little bit. Antonio Sheldon versus Orlando Wilson Prince. I think for me, even before talking, both fighters 0-1-1 for Antonio Sheldon with the draw in his last fight. Prince, obviously, I believe this is his the third fight he's had with the Cage Warriors, and obviously he's had some very tough opponents while he's been here. Obviously, Samuel Barker went over to Octagon and fought Lustin Kaita. That didn't work out too well for him, but he went there nonetheless. And then as well, Tom Means. But Antonio Sheldon, I think, you look at his record, you wouldn't think he's the most experienced pro out there, but he's got a wealth of experience behind him outside the competition, and his mindset into this fight will be incredible, really, to see it play out.
Yeah, Ando's got a wealth of experience that people don't really talk about. So he recently got his black belt. I think it was November time. I like Ando as a person. I've got a lot of time and love for Ando. Obviously, we used to be teammates before I left SPG. That's a whole different story. It's his third time out on Cage Warriors, and it's also Wilson Prince's third time out on Cage Warriors. Now, for me, when Sheldon gets going, his striking's on point. He will put the pace on you, and his grappling, he knows what to do. He's been working a lot of ASW, so I'd expect his wrestling game to be another level up from where it's been before. When his wrestling gets going, that's fantastic because it gets him onto his jiu-jitsu game. And I think if we're looking at kind of Wilson Prince's his last 2 fights, he's lost both by a decision to guys that have somewhat strong grappling. Conversely, all his finishes, Wilson Prince's finishes, have come via sub. So are we going to see, something that goes there? Now, if we don't see it go there, we know Ando can win on the feet. We've seen him have great performances on the feet. What I will say about Wilson Prince is he's an absolute specimen. He's like, for a guy who comes in, you know, at kind of the featherweight limit, he's built like that. He's stacked. So I think it's going to be an interesting fight. I wouldn't want to, you know, call it because, you know, I'm sure I would sound somewhat biased. But I'm certainly very, very interested to watch this one. And on a personal stance, you know, I'd love to see my friend Ando get a win.
Yeah, and you take a look at the fight. Obviously, both men sort of come from a different position, really. I mean, Antonio Sheldon's last fight, everyone were talking about how exciting it was, whereas Prince, he, you know, and it's unrightly deserved to support. You know, no fight's always going to be entertaining, but he received a lot of people were saying it was not a fun fight in his last one, and they were both didn't really get started in there. And when you are facing someone that does come with the high pace that Sheldon will put on him very early on, I feel as well for this fight, they've both got something to come in there and prove, especially Prince, you know, to prove he belongs at this level. He's had the step up and he's not delivered the goods yet that maybe they'd have expected out of him. Whereas Sheldon now, I think he wants to start winning those fights and prove that he also belongs with the promotion and finally start moving into those win column. But I think you take a look at the fight in terms of what it is on paper. It's one of those where both are looking to prove something, and it wonders, are they going to get the best out of both fighters as a result of that?
You've got to drown out that noise. If you're either of these fighters, you got to drown out that noise. I'm sure both of them feel incredible kind of pressure coming into this. You know, both of them had 2 fights here, one draw, 1 loss, and then two losses. You got to drown out the noise. It's not about, sometimes, you know, I'm the biggest guy to turn around and go, you got to have exciting fights, knock him out, get us up, whatever. You know, you got to get the win. Like, first of all, let's know how we're going to win. You know, a lot of people call Carl Prince the guru, and one of the things that he'll talk about often is knowing how you get to your win. Now, if you can get there earlier and knock a guy out or sub a guy or whatever, that's fantastic. But ultimately, like, our game here is to win. I would urge both of these guys to kind of drown out that noise and just, you know, worry about getting the win.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next fight. This one's really exciting for me. We get to see Alex Bold, only 1-0 as a pro, and he's already here in terms of where he's going to be fighting. It's a big step up to take straight away. But Herkus Latraschinas, obviously, he's coming off of a loss, which I believe was with the promotion. Yeah, he fought Oban Elliott over 10 months ago, where he lost to an RNC. A massive step up for Alex Bold to take extremely early on in your pro career as well.
Yeah, I mean, so this is hard. You know, you want to know facing 3-1, and Herkus is like by no means a slouch. He's quite clearly by no means a slouch. He's been fighting since 2018, but he just doesn't get going. So he had 2 fights in 2018, 1 in 2019, then 1 in 2022. So there's a big layoff there. Now I understand there was COVID, but you know, if you conversely flip that with, Alex's record, he was fighting in 2019. He took about a year and a half off, which was again due to the lockdowns and stuff. But he was skill building during that entire period. 6-0 as an amateur. Good scalps on his amateur record. You know, the one that really, there's kind of 2 that stick out to me there. The one that would stick out to me would be, you know, obviously Jamie Hayes. You know, he's 6-5 as an amateur now, I believe. But Mohamed Shazli, I love Shaz. I get on with Shaz really well. Shaz is like 5-1 now. And you know, and Alex can sit there and go, yeah, like you're 5-1, but like I've got a W over you as an army. So when we're looking at these 2, maybe the records don't reflect it right now, but they're both highly skilled guys. So we're expecting a good technical battle here. What I would say is I feel that no matter how you look at this, the grappling edge is going to lie with Alex. Can Alex get his game going is the greater question. I would be confident in saying he can get his game going. I would hope to see him get himself going. The wealth of experience, despite it being amateur, still lies with Alex. Interesting certainly at the fact that, you know, he's only 1-0 as a professional. He's getting this opportunity. I would hope the occasion doesn't get to him.
100%, and I think as well, sort of, you do take a look at the fight in terms of what it is on paper. it's a really very well matched fight. Again, 4 pro fights versus 1 pro fight, but I think the experience that Bo was able to get when he was fighting as an amateur, he's made a massive difference for him as a pro. And obviously, he trains at Manchester Predators. He's around these guys of a wealth of experience. He's trained with other people as well in the past. But I feel, even though he's not had as many pro fights, I feel as though he's still going to be, on paper, the sort of more experienced, in a sense that, he's been fighting the top guys. Some of the amateurs that maybe haven't gone amateur, they could go pro now and they fit in extremely well with promotions like this already. But I think for me, you can't look at this fight and feel as though Alex Bolt's going to lose. I feel like Cage Warriors, to bring him in so early, they definitely must see something in him already.
Yeah, and I think, when we look at the UK amateur scene, I do think we've got one of the better amateur scenes out there at the minute. You see guys that, some of these amateurs that we've got at the moment, they've had like 20 fights before they even think about going pro. Christian Leroy Duncan's a great example of this. Like, he had a lot of amateur fights. He had a lot of good solid experience. I'm not so much for these guys that necessarily go down the IMAF system, just purely on the basis that I don't think it's as replicable as what they're doing. So they're dropping off like, they're dropping off like 4 fights in 1 week. I don't think it's necessarily as replicable, but what I will say for them is that I think it's a really, really, really good opportunity to test how good our amateur level is against pros. I don't look at that 1-0 versus 3-1 as if it's like a big mismatch. Like, you got about the same experience. If anything, I'm probably going to give Alex the edge on the experience. It's not the same fighting under fighting under the UKFC lights as it is fighting under Cage Warriors, but it's about as close as you're going to get at the moment.
Yeah, and I think as well, we'll move on to the next fight. Obviously, Mr. Crazy Chris Price versus Mikhail Falk. Obviously, I mean, you look at the crazy Chris Price's fights, he's a bit of a crazy guy, and then looking at the picture I've got in front of me for Mikhail Falk, I feel like maybe he is as well. But in terms of looking to this fight, what are you sort of feeling for it?
Okay, let's look at like Mikhail Falk first. So Falk, he lost to Yusuf on his last Cage Warriors outing, middle of 2022. Okay, I think it was like a KO in the first round. These things happen. He's got a wealth of pro experience. He's been on a lot of shows where he's had good and bad performances. He does, he'll pick up 2 losses and 2 wins and 2 losses, whatever. He was on a 4-fight win streak, lost 2, won 2, then lost his last one. Chris has had a largely so he's used to seeing, what I mean by that is Falk's used to seeing both sides of the coin here. 6 and 5. Yeah, you've had a lot, you've had 11 pro bouts ultimately, a couple of amateurs in there, but 6 and 5. If we look at Chris's record, 4-0 as a pro, a decent amount of time spent at amateur, I think more than 10 amateur fights. But I don't think, if we're looking at Falk's record, the heads that he's fought, they've got a few more wins next to their name. They've got a few more wins next to their name. When he fought, Yusuf, 8-3 at the time. He's fought 2-1, 2-2. Chris's heads haven't kind of got that record, and everything's ended in under a minute and a half. It's hard to draw a lot from it, and I understand how the UK scene is. I have no doubt that I've been in situations myself. I have no doubt the reason behind it is likely a day of or day before pull out or whatever. But I think it's going to be an interesting test. We're going to see. I believe his levels probably are there. It's going to be good to see that and get the evidence that they are in fact there for him. Not necessarily the fight I'm most looking forward to. I won't make out like I know a ton about Falk, but I think it'll be a good fight all the same. It's good to see kind of British guys getting opportunities. So good fight all the same.
Yeah, and I think when you do sort of look at Chris Price's sort of fights, I think when you do sort of look at the experience he's got, you probably aren't going to pay too much attention to what he's done at pro so far. Obviously, I know from speaking to him in his last fight, it was meant to have a very well matched fight on UKFC. But he had his opponent taken away from him and his opponent given to someone else on the card. And he was unfortunately sort of left with someone he didn't want to face whatsoever. and he didn't even know, I think, until maybe a day, 2 days before, who he was going to fight, if he had a fight. So you can feel for him on that, and I think he has one of these maybe tougher tests in the past. I mean, you see a Reece Street, chances are someone pulled out there, and he's come in for his quick 300 quid and whatever else he may get, or even more. You never know. With Reece Street is an expensive guy these days. He makes more than most of the regional pros, doesn't he? But I think it'll be
We've
good to
discussed this
see.
before. Like we've spoken about this before, and I need to stress, like, it's not the fighter's fault half the time. I have no doubt there is times where it is the fighter's fault, but I've been in that situation, and it's horrible, and I have no doubt Chris doesn't enjoy it himself. Like he probably is more excited about this because he's getting a real fight. So it'll be lovely to see him get the opportunity to have what we would consider to be a proper fight as such. And I think it's the kind of fight that he needs. I would be, I'm less concerned as such at the records of the guys that he has fought, and I'd be very much concerned with what's going on in front of him.
Yeah, and I think it's a good test for him. And I think he is going to deliver on that test as well. I think he's almost as though he's got a chip on his shoulder. I mean, people are quick to judge, but I feel as though he will prove in this fight, and the work he's done at other gyms as well, this camp. I think this will be his one to really show that this is where he belongs, and he is at the level which I think he is at as well. But we'll may as well move on. Obviously, this fight I'm very excited for, to see one of the names on the card, and even Dean as well. Very, very experienced fighter that we saw in terms of his amateur career. He's fought some good names during then, and now he's a pro. He's taken on Ian Davis. Sorry, I mean, this man, I feel as though he's one of those where people know where he's going to be at. I feel in the future potentially.
Star on the rise is the term that I'd use, but if I'm trying to catch a star on the rise, I'm catching him now. Like I want to get that scalp real early. I want to get that scalp before you go great places. Skill sets are good on very, very good, very even though on both guys. I think if you look at their kind of performances, a lot of stuff they have has been pretty even so far. The greater amateur record obviously going towards Ewan Davis, and that's cool. It kind of all doesn't really matter when you turn pro. But 2 pretty quick finishes on FCC and his pros. Obviously not that Deck hasn't. He had a quick finish first round, I think it was, on his FCC pro debut. And then that no contest after the ground and pound with O'Connor. It'll be interesting to see what kind of comes from that. I think, when you're looking at 2 well-matched, really talented guys in the early doors of their career, you never really know what you're going to get. And I'm confident that it'll be an explosive match. I would like to see it get out of the first round, but like both guys seem to like to get each other out in the first round. So let's see what comes from it.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing is obviously Davis is a very good fighter, but even in his amateur career, you look, did he face the best of the best while he was an amateur? I don't think he really did, but he's proven he is at a high level. He just hasn't really had the guys to prove that he's there and he can take them on as well. Because you can make anyone look extremely good against someone who maybe isn't at their level in terms of the experience wise. But I think again, it's a closer fight on paper, but I think it's going to be one of those that could be a lot of fireworks, as you mentioned.
I'd like to see them both just kind of get to the center of the cage as quick as possible, and we'll just clash it out. Like I say, like you've kind of mentioned there, we can't take too much from what people have done at AMI, so let's just get it out there and let's really test our skill set. I don't think at the kind of level they are as pros that there's necessarily a huge requirement for game planning as such. So I think this could be good. This could be very, very good, and I think it's good for the standard of UK MMA that we're at.
Yeah, and we'll move into the next fight. Obviously, Madars Firminas, who we've seen many a time before with the promotion, and then Alexei. Not going to attempt the surname. I butchered enough today. I'll hand the surname over to you. I feel like you've got a wealth of knowledge over me when it comes to surname pronunciation, I'm sure.
What? Manskiwi?
Yeah, there you go. That one worked.
Manskiwi.
Yeah. That works.
So with Alexei, right? Alexei's well experienced, well traveled, 14-7. He's still only young at 28 years old. And he's been under these lights before. Has he been under the amount of times that Madars has? No. He's lost to Mason Jones. He's lost to Reese McKee. He's lost to the upper echelon of this division already. What I will say for him, and this is an incredible scalp to have, and I think you really have to kind of deep dive where he's been at to know this. He's beat Soren back. Like, he's beat Soren back before. That's a fantastic scalp to have. Like, if there's a scalp that I remember Soren back, and this is so long ago, but I remember Soren back beating Paddy Pimblett. And the reason I always remember it is Paddy had a nasty RNC locked in, and Soren was just like, nope, I'm good. Like, I'm good. And then obviously he went on to have some Bellator success. I haven't heard from him in a while, but what I would say in terms of Matters is he's struggled at the upper echelon. So, he lost to Adam Proctor, he lost to Jack Grant, Matthias Figlak took him out. He's had good performances against, if you think about it, and the guys that he's had good performances against, they've come on leaps and bounds since. He beat Mick Stanton. Mick Stanton's now champion of the world. Had a fantastic performance against Will Curry quite recently, which I was personally very shocked at. Will Curry is an absolute stud, and Stano was just like, yeah, don't worry about it. I'm going to win. He had a great performance against Owen Elliott and took a W there. I think gatekeeper status is where Matters is at. Matters' job is not on the line here. Matters' job is not on the line here. He loses this, it's not a problem. We're going to have you back. He's always exciting. He's been his last like 6, 7, 8 fights, Cage Warriors. He's always exciting. He brings a good crowd with him. He brings fantastic energy. Excited to see what goes on. The only thing I would say is that obviously Matters is coming off a loss, and typically he's more dangerous when he's coming off a loss. So let's see where he kind of goes. I'd like to see Matters get to that upper echelon again and he's been close to title contention a couple of times. And the Latvian Express could be ready to take off once more.
100%. I mean, we'll move on. Obviously, great fight there, but I've got to move on to this fight. Obviously, a proper wakey man here. We've got James Power. You know what? I'm not hiding my bias. James Power, the pound for pound #1 in the world.
Pound for pound,
anyone from
world.
Wakefield, anyone from the Yorkshire area, they get biased, but especially Wakefield area, they're getting the full marks from me. Obviously, James Power last year, he made his debut with the promotion against Adam Shelley, which I think for a debut performance in Cage Warriors, it was up there in terms of the work that he was able to do. But I think the big one now is obviously Capera 11-7. Obviously, he's someone who's been with Cage Warriors, ACA, and these big promotions. He's used to it. He's comfortable there. But James Powell, obviously, he's not been on the biggest promotions other than Cage Warriors in his debut with the promotion. But I don't feel as though that'll be a part. I feel he's going to bring a very big crowd to this fight. I mean, he's a coach. All of his fighters are going to be there. Fighters' parents are going to be there. He coaches a lot of the junior fighters. Promoters are going to be there. He's worked with in the past. It's going to be a very exciting fight to see, and I think it'll be the one that sort of pushes on James Power to the next level, or just sort of instates where Capera is, and the level that he's at the moment is where he does belong.
James is a very good fighter. Like, I've watched some of his clips coach him. You can tell he understands this game. He gets it. Like, he's a guy that gets it. I think this is probably one of the hardest tests that he's had so far. Adam Shelley prior to that and Adam was 2-1. We're looking at like Capera, who's coming in here 11-7, wealth of experience, been on those big shows like you mentioned. The thing is, he's lost at the upper echelon. He lost to George Hardwick, obviously champ now. Bataev, he lost to Batista, Henderson Batista. Those were all on the bounce, I do believe. But he's been around for a very long time. We're looking at kind of pro debut. Well, difficult because of the way that it works in Poland and stuff. But, we're looking at fights as early as 2011. He's been around for a long time. Power's debut was in 2018. So we're looking at just a level of experience. This, to me, is going to tell us a lot about where James Power goes next. Is
a
he
100%.
like the next breakout star? Is he the guy? Is he our new lightweight guy? Or bantamweight guy? No, lightweight. What am I talking about? Is he our new lightweight guy? Is he next? If he's next, he's going to go past here, and then we've got to be talking about, okay, how do we get him? Because we're going to need another fight after this. We'll need another one, and then can we get him to George? Very interesting fight. I think if I'm James, I would guess that he's going to come in the better shape. He always looks in impeccable shape. If you look at the kind of the ways that people tend to beat Copera, we're looking at finishes. Put it on him. Let's get it on him early doors, and we're not seeing guys get him out of there in the first round. We're seeing him get him out of there in the second, third. Let's put it on him. Let's work the body. Let's get in there early doors, cause some damage, and get him out. I think, I hate making predictions, but I'd like to see James do this one. I'd like to see him get it done. But, let's invest in the body early, get him out of there second round.
Yeah, and as well with James Power, obviously in the recent weeks, he's announced he's going to become a father now as well. Do you feel as though when something like that does happen, like he's not just fighting for himself anymore, really? He's now going to have a complete family to start fighting for. And do you feel as though it does make a big sort of difference when things like that do sort of happen, where it's no longer you're fighting for yourself, you're sort of fighting for other people almost?
I can't imagine that it wouldn't. I can't speak from experience in terms of that realm, but what I can say is that if I look at, say, a lot of fighters that have become fathers, one or two things tends to happen. Things get more serious because you need to win, or things get like, oh, well, I've got kids now. And he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that's like, well, I've got kids now. He strikes me as the kind of guy that's like, I've got kids now. Like I need to pay for my children. So, and I think someone that's used to being a coach at the kind of level that he is, he's got his own gym. I can't see him having that kind of response to it. But I think it'll be a nice explosive fight. I think he's like the first of the main card, if I'm not mistaken. And then that moves us on to Rhys McEwen.
It does indeed, obviously. I think Rhys McEwen versus Dan Digit. Again, Rhys McEwen, he's always in these fights where you look at them and they are quite close. For me, I don't think I spoke to him right at the start of his camp in an interview. He mentioned that, it's going to be a close fight. In terms of the prep he was doing at that time, it was focusing on himself. Maybe now he's shifted his attention over to what his opponent's going to be doing. But he's another guy that's maybe two fights off of a title shot. I got the pleasure of speaking. He spoke to me privately, obviously. He's gave me 3 goals that he has that he's going to accomplish in the next year, in 2023. And when he sets out a goal, he's normally doing them. I'm not to say what they are just yet, as being told by him, but he's got some goals that he's looking at this year, and he feels like a very meticulous guy in terms of the planning and the sort of manifesting what he says is going to happen.
I like Rhys. We spoke after his last win. And obviously that guillotine, things weren't necessarily always going his way in that fight. What I would say is that, if Rhys comes out and fights his fight, it's a very different story than if Rhys comes out and fights his opponent fight. And you can see that in him when he made the switch and said, like, I'm going to fight my way now. There's a very, very different attitude to the second round. And then he, worked 4 minutes deep and he's got the finish. This is not, Dan that he's fighting is not a necessarily easy fight. However, he's only been under those Cage Warriors lights once. Fantastic grappler. He's got good grappling experience. So I think we're more likely to see this kind of go to the feet. And Rhys is solid on his feet. I think if he stays very grounded for this one, he's going to have a good outing, and it'll be interesting to see him get himself going. This is kind of his biggest test so far, just in the way that whilst he's fought good fighters before, Dan is sitting there at 8-1. It's probably the best record of anyone that he's fought. Maybe not the most experienced, but certainly the most kind of wins without having masses of losses. And I think obviously I support Eric Skier almost like in their entirety in everything they do. And obviously he's got a great relationship with them, and they've kind of let me know how he's looking, how he's feeling towards this. It'll be very interesting to see what he comes with. He's largely the reason that we're going, and he always brings a great contingent of support. And the guy's coming from Scotland. He's rolling down from Scotland, bringing heads and heads to Manchester. He's going to have He's the kind of guy that I turn around and say stud. Like, he's a stud. He's a couple of wins away, goes off, maybe wins a belt, and then we can see from there. I think there's some growing to be done before he looks at like the big show. If he's looking towards the UFC, that bantamweight division is stacked, and I think there's a little bit of growing to be done first. But I think he's definitely on the right path.
Yeah, and I think obviously you mentioned the people that he brings. It becomes the Reece McEwen arena when he does eventually fight, and it's, I feel as though that might play on his opponent a little bit. If it goes wrong for McEwen in the first round, which it almost sort of did in his last fight, where he didn't look at the usual that we saw. It comes out in the second round, bish bash bosh. He's back to what he does best, and he changes the pacing of the fight. But I think the crowd he brings will be very interesting. And moving on into the next fight, obviously the penultimate bout. Yeah, that'll work. We'll get there. Rory Evans versus Liam Gittins, obviously, is another one of these next-gen guys that Cage Warriors has really pushed. And he's taken on Rory Evans, obviously. It's a good fight. Perhaps maybe there's another fight on the card you could have put in that slot for the third to last card on the third to last bout on the card, but nonetheless, it is a very exciting fight to sort of see booked.
Yeah, I got a feeling this card has got to be subject to change. This card must be subject to change, because, and I'm not knocking anybody here, but I don't think this doesn't sit to me as, I don't look at this and go, this is the, like, if you're telling me that this is higher than Adam Cullen, that's a really weird thing to get my head around. But it'd be a good fight. Rory's coming in 5-3. Gittins is coming in like 9-4. Gittins has had a good couple of outings last time, so obviously he had a TKO and a decision, and he's been on this show before for a long time. What I will say is he struggled at the top. Gerardo Fani, Kingsley Crawford, those kind of heads have been difficult to get over, and he's good. Like, he's very good, quite well rounded, but I think there's still work to be done as such. Now, in terms of do I think he'll win? Yeah, I think he's had the better run than Rory. Rory might be on a 4-fight win streak, but what we've got to bear in mind is before that he was on a 3-fight losing streak. Back was kind of against the wall, and he's wheeled off 3. But let's look at the way he's wheeled them off. He's had a ground and pound finish. He's had a sub and 2 decisions. One of his decisions being over Wesley Meyer. Now, Wesley is well known for the fact that if we can get him into the deeper distance, that cardio gas tank just won't be there. He's also had an extended layoff. So, Rory's not been out since 2021, like September 2021. That's a long time. It's a long time to be sitting not getting fights. Now, I'm not saying it's much different, but what I will say is since he had a fight, Liam's had 3, with 1 being cancelled, and he was moved to the following week instead. He's active. I think the big factor for Liam is the fact that he's going to be active, and he's coming out of next gen. Next gen have got a bunch of great fighters at the moment. They have, they're on the world stage. We're sitting there looking at, Paddy and Molly on the UFC. We're looking at, multiple Cage Warriors guys. They're everywhere at the minute. I think when you're training with that kind of level of team, I would be, if I was a betting man, I wouldn't be betting against Liam on this one.
Yeah, I think that is everything to really look at that fight. Obviously, a very exciting one that is coming up. But the next one, I feel as though if you're a fan of UK MMA, you're looking forward to this. It's sort of like a fight for the fans almost. Chris Bungard versus Gavin Hughes. It's one where both have been around for years. They've both gone on to start doing other things in the MMA world. It's a fight for the fans almost. Both are going to bring it, and it's going to be very exciting to see. Big tasty
Gavin Hughes. I mean, obviously, Chris is in a different situation than Gavin. Chris is just coming off a loss to George, and obviously, that's the difficulty with that is that you were fighting for the lightweight title last. So, does a win immediately take you back to it? I'm not sure it does. Obviously, Gavin is coming off 2 losses, Landau being 1 in Bellator, and I think it was somebody else in Bellator just before that. What I will say for Gavin is coming from Bellator, I think it's a slightly bigger stage than Cage Warriors at the minute. I understand the Europe series that the Bellator run is not quite as big over here as necessarily Cage Warriors feel, but the kind of the greater things that come with being in Bellator, you know, your kind of press, the fact that you're around a little bit higher level guys as a general rule of thumb, I think does play a big factor. So having fought those kind of people, and you know, like you said, both fighters have been around for a long time. I mean, if we look back to the kind of pro records, you're looking at a pro debut for Gavin in 2015. You're looking, you know, 2013, as far back as 2013 for Chris. They've been around for a long time. You're looking at a wealth of experience in this one. But what I would say is that out of the two, I feel that, you know, Chris probably does have the crisper striking. It'll be an interesting match, but I mean, I think Gavin could probably edge it if he's smart with his wrestling. If he comes in and wrestles intelligently, does a lot of work against the cage, I think he could see a good performance for himself.
No, 100%. And I think sort of the planning Gavin Hughes puts in it, he is very meticulous with it. I remember speaking to him before his last fight with Bellator Yves Lando, when he fought there. I mean, everything that he eyed Yves doing, he did do it, but obviously I feel as though maybe the execution of his plan didn't come to fruition for him. Dog's getting excited for this fight as well. I don't know if he's picking up in the background, but he's going at it. But no, he's very meticulous with his planning, and Bungard as well. He's pretty much the same. So it is definitely one of those fights for the fans that people will be very excited to see.
Yeah, and I think it's what's good about that is that probably does sit in the co-main slot for me, purely because obviously we're followed up by George Hardwick now, star of the show. George is an interesting character. So I spoke to George before briefly, and he's so down to earth, and I love the fact that he's looking to be an active champion. What I will say off the back of that is that, you know, not all activity is good activity. He's looking at a particularly hard fight in front of him. You know, he's looking at an opponent who is, if I'm not mistaken, 9-1, with good fights over in KSW, like great fights over in KSW. I think in terms of promotion, KSW are huge where they are, but I don't think he's ever fought anybody like George. George is particularly well-rounded. And obviously, I think his only loss came to Flaminis, of all people. But I think what you're going to see is the fact that he's been under Cage Warriors and those bright lights for such a long time is going to really pay dividends for him. The body shot that he finished Chris Bungard with was absolutely fantastic. And you'll see that there's been a running theme over the last few fights of a lot of hard work to the body. If Jan comes in expecting all of this hard work to the body, I think he's in for a very, very difficult night. I don't think you're going to see as much of that. I think you're going to see a lot of, you know, probably head kicks, maybe some calf kicks, a lot of grappling. And we know that Hardwick has fantastic grappling, plenty of finishes via sub. I do see him getting him out there before the distance, and I don't see Hardwick having a five rounder for the night. It's to me, it's Hardwick's fight to lose. I think Jan he'll need to come out and put the pressure on. He'll need to avoid any kind of big connecting strikes because he's definitely not going to be the longer of the two. And if he does really want to have success, he's probably going to have to initiate the grappling on his own terms. You know, look to get maybe get to the back or get to some positions where he can cause damage either against the fence or on the floor without being particularly at risk. You'll see a lot of his early fights were finished by sub, but he did have a few decisions in there. Are we looking at somebody that he can necessarily sub? I don't think Hardwick's a particularly easy guy for him to sub. Not that any of his opponents have been easy, but I don't think he's in a situation where he's going to have a great performance if he's looking to get a submission. If I'm Hardwick, I'm not investing in the body because I think everybody's seen me invest in the body. I'm going to show body, go ahead. I'm going to work the legs. I'm going to look to keep the distance and really pick my shots. And I think if he does pick his shots nice and clean, he could be looking at a KO here.
100%. And I think you take a look at George Hardwick, obviously. The Bungard fight is, weirdly enough, he came in on short notice and put his belt on the line. And then the fight before that, Kyle O'Driscoll, obviously. I mean, what a fight that was at the time. You look at the build-up there, Kyle O'Driscoll, he should have been, perhaps he should have been signed to the UFC before he even fought George Hardwick. And I think both those guys, you put them in the UFC, they'll get results, they'll get the wins. And I think that's what makes this one sort of it's almost like Lies had been overlooked by people. I know Hardwick isn't overlooking him at all because, as he said, if he does, he'll get chinned. But what makes it very exciting, it's just the fact that if he wins it, UFC surely they've got to be looking at him more and more now. Or if Lies wins, he steals all the momentum from Hardwick. Hardwick at the moment, he's the guy in Cage Warriors for me. I feel as though there's guys that are there, but he's sort of the man at the minute. A lot of people talk about him and the attention he gets for where he is. It keeps increasing every time.
The active champion thing is really paying dividends for him. The fact that he's down to be so active and on it all the time. What I would say is that if you are Hardwick, is there a rush? Hardwick's not that old. Are we like stressed at getting to the UFC right now? He's 26. He's been in Bellator. Is there still growing to do that we could be done outside of the UFC? We don't want to see situations where, guys are going and having a particularly hard time. The guy that always comes to mind when I think of this is Jai Herbert. He went and, and same for Modestas. He went and they got really, really difficult matches fed to them. Almost unnecessarily. I know it was like a different time with Fight Island and whatnot, but really, really difficult matches. And the cards are going to be stacked against you when you come as a Cage Warriors champion now. Like come for the king, you better aim for the head. Like, you better not miss, because we've built such a good class of crop of champions that we've sent on that have had really great performances. If you look at the kind of guys that have gone from Cage Warriors, even in the old days, your Dan Hardys, your Michael Bispings, Conor McGregor's, they've all gone on to have fantastic careers. And what I don't want to see is guys make that jump too early, and then they have to come back and go, I love the fact that Modestas is back there again. I think it's awesome. He never should have been out of the UFC. Like, he didn't, but he belongs where he is, and he deserves everything he gets. But he had really, really difficult fights when he got there. Jai's, obviously, most recent fight, not the easiest of fights. Ilia Topuria was a difficult fight. Francisco Trinaldo was a difficult fight. And I think when you come as a Cage Warriors champion, one or two things is going to happen now. You're going to go Contender Series, much like Hadley had to, much like Jack Cartwright had to. And then it seems to be a little bit fairer. Like, you go in, win a Contender Series, yeah, come on, we'll treat you fairly. If you don't, like, you're coming in almost with this aura about you that you already are a killer, so you must be fighting upper echelon immediately, and they want to kind of almost shoot you up the ranking because you're going to be the next. And that's the problem. You come in and you're going to be, quote unquote, the next. Just want to see George go out, instill his game, continue to be a fighting champion, get another one under your belt, like get that feeling of consistently winning on these stages. And not that you're not consistently winning, because you are, but let's be that champion. This is your second defense as champ. Let's get 3 in. Let's get 3 in, and then we'll evaluate the scope of things. Let's get 3 in, because the last thing you want is to go to make the move too early, and then when you are ready, the door's already shut. I don't think that'll be the case for him. I think he's I think he's the man. But yeah, I wouldn't want to see him kind of rush through it. Is this going to be the hardest fight he could get outside the UFC? Maybe not. There might be harder fights for him to get outside of the UFC. Let's get another hard one and let's move on.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that pretty much it wraps us up. There you go. You've been blessed to spend this much time with me. I don't know how long it's been. When you're with me, time flies by like you wouldn't believe.
My God.
Maybe around an hour. There you go. Have a sip of the tea. It'll have gone cold by now as well. But look, when you get to be with me, your heart's going to be filled with warmth. So you don't even need a warm tea anymore. So you're welcome to be on my platform, my friend. Thank you. Thank you for coming on today. Obviously, you've got a fight coming up. Tell the people what they can expect to see from that one.
Charlie Milner. Me versus Charlie Milner come April 29th. I'm excited. Awesome vibes. Obviously, Charlie's been around on the scene for a long time. I'm getting old. I was ready to fight Charlie when I was like 1-0. I think he was 5-0 at the time. awesome that Charlie's finally accepted it. I think it'll be an absolutely buzzing fight. Yeah, like may the best man win. I ain't planning on losing. And then hopefully, there's a little show out in France. And I really like croissants. So if they're trying to have me, I'm trying to go eat some French food, and knock out some Aries heavyweights. So we're gonna get to business. We've got like 3 weeks to go. But I got a lot to do between now and then. I got to go and watch Cage Warriors. I'm going to see some of my friends fight BKB. I'm going to knock out Charlie, and then it's just me going to France. Me going to France, eating French food. I like stuff like that. But no, very excited for it. My training's going well as always. Just another day at the office.
Well, there you go. That is everything from myself. As mentioned, obviously, you're welcome. I'll let you enjoy yourself now. I'll have a speak to the upper powers at Joe Reynolds MMA, and we'll see if we'll bring you back again. But
You're welcome. You're welcome.
There you go. But now, as always, great pleasure to be joined by you, buddy. Catch you soon. Bye-bye.
Go steady.